And now it's time. I said and now I said it's time. And now for something completely Machinima. And now for something completely Machinima. And now for something almost entirely, very precisely, but just not exclusively, sort of adjacently, kind of approximately, complete Machinima. And now for something completely Machinima.
Hello and welcome to And Now for Something Completely Machinima, a podcast about machinima, virtual production, and related technologies. My name is Phil Rice, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Tracy Harwood.
Hello.
Ricky Grove.
Howdy.
And Damian Valentine.
Hello.
So this week we will be talking about Ricky's film pick for the month. And this is an interesting one. Ricky, why don't you tell us about it?
Sure thing. I'm really thrilled that there's a interesting synergy going on between my pick today and Phil's pick, which we will talk about next week. They connect each other in terms of their ideas and that. As you know, I've been choosing films from archive.org, the Machinima collection there. And I've mentioned in the past that they're not really... Yeah, initially when the collection came together, they were curated, and you could see pretty consistently high quality machinima, high quality meaning production values, ideas behind them, originality, that kind of thing. But I think they've stopped doing that. So what you do is you have quite a range of machinima choices, from being the absolute best kind of stuff to really at bottom level kind of thing. And I was going through them and I came across this machinima called Happy Wheels. And I watched it, and it was stupid and crass and cheap. And I started thinking about it, and I thought this would be an excellent choice, not so much for the actual film, because what we do is we try to pick unique films and talk about what makes them so interesting. But I thought it would generate a conversation about how it was produced, who targeted for, who the audience is targeted for, its background, which I know Tracy will come out and talk about, but also the idea of a community of machinima viewers and how that has changed over time. So I'm less interested in talking about the film, which is obviously pretty bad, and more interested in talking about what the film implies, what its background is, the community, the audience, and also a little bit about violence, cruelty, and animation. I know that's quite deep topic, but I just finished reading a book called West of Everything by Jane Tompkins, The Inner Life of Westerns. And books inform my sensibility of the world more than any other media. And in this, she talks about Westerns, and she talks about the cruelty and focus on death in Westerns. And that led me to make this pick. Basically, the pick is a series of cruel deaths made in a game that's been around for a while, called Happy Wheels. Now, the actual production quality of the film, excuse me, is not that bad. They get the gestures, the lip sync right, the rendering of the cartoon is not particularly good, but it suffices. And what it appeals to, it appeals to that notion of humor in violent cruelty. And in cartoons, that works very well. And it's been around for a long, long time. Farce is basically a series of cruel escapades that we laugh at because we realize they're not real human beings that are being injured or hurt. The best example I can think of is the Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner in the Roadrunner cartoons. We see the coyote get smashed in unbelievable, cruel ways. And we cheer on the Roadrunner because we have no investment as far as them being real beings. They're cartoons. So cruelty is something that we laugh at because of the very fact that it takes away our sense of responsibility or guilt towards watching someone be cruel to someone else. In the same way, we watch this short film, which begins with a guy in a lawnmower, the kind that you ride, running over all kinds of people. It's got like this Ozzie and Harriet, this small town music vibe to it, which again is ironic and produces laughter. He's killing everybody. There's blood everywhere. Later in the episode, a father and a son are out, and the kid ends up being thrown into some wall of spikes, and he dies. And then it separates, and the kid's thrown up. And the father's comment is, "Well, I guess I won't win that Father of the Year award." It produces humor by the sort of non sequitur contrast. We don't expect a father seeing his son die so cruelly to say what he says, and that makes us laugh, and we feel safe doing that. However, there's a certain sense of cruelty in this particular film that is annoying and bothersome. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why this kind of film was created. Tracy will give us the background on it, but basically it was based on a game that was made by Jim Banucci. And the people at the second iteration of Machinima.com, not the first one, the second one, run by Philip Devoise. I met Philip Devoise at a Machinima meeting, and one of the things he kept trying to tell us is make very short, popular episodes of Machinima. That's what he wanted to do. What he did was he bought the thing as an investment in order to put together short films that he could sell to a very targeted audience. And that targeted audience was young men between 16 and 25. Now, we all know young men between 16 and 25 have a love of violence and cruelty as humor. So it fits in perfectly for the kind of audience that it's being sold to. And it was being sold because they wanted to build up viewership for YouTube to make a lot of money. And he did make a lot of money on doing that. And he got a team together composed of people who were like that, 16 to 25, mostly men, making content that would appeal to the same kind of people. Now, in the first iteration of Machinima.com, if this film had gone up to the community, it would have been eviscerated. It would have just been smashed to pieces. Although there would have been some people that would have laughed and would have defended it. But for the most part, it just simply would have been destroyed. However, in the second iteration of it, it would have appealed to those kind of people. And I wanted to bring up a discussion with you all about, the idea of violence and cruelty in Machinima, the targeted audience that Machinima.com made, and our sense of community, how much it's fragmented over the years. So that's what I had to say about this awful little film. What did you guys think?
You want me to give the background a little bit more, of the detail?
I think that would probably be a good idea.
Because that might then give you opportunity to sort of think more about its target audience, because I think there's some things that I've discovered that might pin it down a little bit more as well.
Cool.
Okay, so this was released on November the 15th, 2016 on by Machinima, as you said, based on Jim Bonacci's game, as you said, Happy Wheels, and it was produced by a company called BMP Digital, the digital division of Bunim Murray Productions. And they released 9 episodes in this series, which expanded on the game. And at the time, that game had more than 12 million players a month. And there were over 3 billion Let's Play video views of it. And
Wow.
more than 5 million user-generated levels as basically, it's one of the top free to play games in the
Didn't
App Store.
Bonucci include a level editor and all of that
He
with the game?
did. Yes, he did, which I'll tell you about in a minute.
Okay.
Because that, I think, was critical to how it's evolved. So this series was launched on Go90, which was primarily for a US audience. And then it went to a global audience with Sky Q, that's in the UK, AMC Iberia, which was Spain and Portugal, and Sohu in China. And its executive producers were John P. Roberts. That's not the guy who bankrolled Woodstock, but a guy that is the chief content officer now for a studio called Pure Imagination, and somebody else called Gil Goldsheen, who now co-runs, that is, something called 5X Media. Now, Go90 was an internet TV channel which was operated by Verizon. But apparently that, according to Wikipedia anyway, that was plagued with a series of failed program launches, not dissimilar to what you're talking about with Machinima's latest strategy, in actual fact, Ricky. Eventually, Go90 was shut down in July 2018. So what would that be? A little before Machinima itself was switched off. Now, Happy Wheels, the series, featured these characters, various fan characters called, one of them was called Wheelchair Guy, another one was called Irresponsible Dad, and the one that you just mentioned was Lawnmower Man. And the game itself is entirely focused on this kind of what became a very notorious dark humor and a penchant for blood and gore. The voice actors in it were pretty well-known YouTubers in their day. One was called Jordan Moron, otherwise known as Captain Sparkles, who played the business guy. He was a very well-known YouTube personality specializing in Minecraft gameplay and themed music videos. He had something like 11.5 million subscribers, and on his channel, over 4.1 billion views of his content. That tells you a lot about what Machinima are up to. Now, he was originally signed to Machinima, and obviously now he has his own network called Xreal, which is still part, as I understand it, of Fullscreen, which of course is still owned by Warner. And his Minecraft short called Revenge, I'm not too sure when that was released, but that still holds, I believe, a Guinness World Record for the number of views, not surprisingly with those kinds of figures. So that was one of the voices in it. Another one was called Ryan McNulty. XRPN13 was his handle. He plays Charles's dad, and was actually a well-known Minecrafter as well. He played Minecraft Hunger Games, particularly, and was well known to be a collaborator with Captain Sparkles. As I understand it, he no longer YouTubes. He does do occasional twitching, but not much on YouTube. Now, the show was very similar to the game. The series involves these characters in Happy Wheels going through, as you said, these brutal and violent courses with excessive gore. But it did have only the one season, albeit with these 9 episodes in total. And each of the episodes of the series ran sort of 3 to 5 minutes. The game Happy Wheels is basically a ragdoll physics adventure-based flash game, which launched in 2010. Players control a selection of various characters with their goal being to set or get to the finish line and activate some kind of trigger, which in itself triggers a victory, and then collect tokens and basically avoid being splattered across levels by all these hazards and obstacles and whatnot. And as you said, users can create and share their own custom scenarios using this level editor that Bonacci released. Guess how many levels have been created?
No idea.
10 million. Over 10 million user-made levels, which is just an astonishing thing, I think.
I think so too.
I've never heard anything like this, actually. Apparently, Bonacci was motivated to make the game out of sheer disappointment in other games that he describes as ragdoll physics games. Apparently, he said in an interview in 2010 that no one was making their ragdolls die properly. They used flop around harmlessly, or in some instances they have some can over and over. So that was his reason for doing it. And originally, Happy Wheels was made for fun between Jim and some of his friends. It only really contained the wheelchair guy. But after that, it gained some notoriety, and he basically let it loose into what it has become since. He also took on a few other projects, one being Total Jerkface, which is if you go to his YouTube channel, it's called totaljerkface.com. That's the only place where you can play this game now. He also created something called Divine Intervention Game Test 12 and some flash movies called Beautiful Day and Where's My Bike. He originally started working on Happy Days in about 2006, and he quit his job, as he was making this in order to sort of finish it. But then as he was doing that, he realized he just couldn't create all the levels himself. It would just take him too long. And that is the point at which he opened up the level editor, where users could kind of get involved. I can't believe how many levels there are in it, actually.
Yeah.
The demo version, as I said, is he put through all these different websites. I think it's a free-to-play game. There was a mobile app that was released in 2015, an Android app in 2020, and by the end of 2020, there was a full JavaScript remake of it, which is what you can see on his website.
So how did Machinima get involved in it?
Well, he was a YouTuber. I would say he was a YouTuber, or at least ways. I don't know. So Bonacci wasn't involved with Machinima, but the creators were, just by the sheer number of Let's Plays and what have you that came through.
So did he get cut out of any of the profits or benefits from the series?
I don't really know how he's made his money. I couldn't really pin that down in what I've seen, because I don't think this is free to play. Whether he gets a cut from levels being uploaded through.
Well, I was thinking about the Machinima's YouTube channel, and knowing Debevoise's penchant for creating agreements which benefited him and
the games
screwed others.
Yeah.
He probably didn't get a dime.
Well, no, what Machinima were very good at actually was generating advertising for game devs. So it's possible that he got his cut through the game dev contribution. I don't really know, but that would be my guess.
It's also possible that people watching the actual videos on Machinima YouTube channel.
Yes, exactly.
I want to play this game or try it out.
I see.
So the indirects.
Yes, but the indirects They wouldn't generate any income, I don't think, because it's free. But anyway, whatever the financial model is, I'm not 100% sure, but I'd say it's like you said, Ricky, it's got to be something to do with Machinima. So insofar as I can tell, the last update to the game was Feb 2004. There's obviously a fan wiki for this. There's all the levels mentioned in this. I can't believe, well, I'd say all. Probably fair to say that some of the most popular ones are there. I logged into the Discord for it as well to have a look in there. And when I went online, which I have to say was about 5:30 this morning, there were about 2,500 people online. But the wiki does say it has over 90,000 members on the Discord.
Wow.
Yep. Now you're going to ask me what I thought about these episodes. I'm thinking.
Tracy, what did you think of these episodes?
Well, considering it's 2D and low poly animation, which thank goodness it is, I thought it was surprisingly bloody and gory. It is obviously not to my taste.
Well, I wasn't asking you whether you liked them or not.
No.
When I chose it, I knew everybody wouldn't like it. I didn't like them. But I'm just curious as my questions about cruelty and animation, about Machinima.com's focus on a particular audience. That's what I was interested in.
Well, I can see where you're coming from. And indeed, I can see why folks would get into this. I mean, I would guess if you can sit through trite like Final Destination or Scream or I Know What You Did Last Summer or Five Nights at Freddy's, it's got to be the same kind of pointless horror as those films are targeting.
But I think reduced, like a soup that you left on the oven for too long and it's distilled down to it's just like its essence.
It's very cool. I mean, there is no real point to it that other than just how much gore can you get out of each.
Well, cruelty. That's the point.
Yes, exactly.
But cruelty, as I commented on, showing people in situations where you wouldn't expect cruelty to occur and death to occur, which makes things funny. And I think it appeals to a particular group of young men who find that kind of cruelty very funny.
Indeed. Well, I mean, my notes here, I mean, there's clearly a level of humor in it, but it obviously isn't my taste. It actually made me squirm a bit because, of course, you know what's coming. You know when you've got giant blades breaking loose and running havoc and lawn mowing over people and people getting run over. You know what's the result of that's going to be. It's just, you know, each death is just more unseemly.
More jokes.
Well, yes.
More humor.
It's just, yes. I mean, it's a kind of craft where the craft is about setting up joke after joke, which frankly I just don't think are in particularly good taste. It's clear there is a narrative there, though, given that, because you know you wouldn't be able to sort of necessarily see the joke if you didn't understand what the narrative was. So there is a narrative in it. And brief though the episodes are, you kind of get a clear sense of each of the characters as well. You know, what did I say? The editing's quite well done. The music is confusing, I kind of think. It's sort of Disney and Hanna-Barbera, and
which is the contrast.
Yes.
The happy music versus the death and cruelty of all of the characters. And my point that I was trying to make was that Machinima, the one reason for its success is its ability to target the interests and types of people and produce content that would appeal to those particular types of people. And that was a vast difference between the original Machinima, which had a much more open process and was not about commercializing something to make money. Because the sole purpose of this series is to make money for Machinima, the people that produce Machinima.com.
Yeah.
So Also, it's
what I
not
can say
about
about that.
community. It's not about building a community. It's not about encouraging people to be creative or to produce content that's based on human values or anything like that. It's just to produce. It's like the pulps in the 30s, to produce consistent content over and over again that works on a targeted audience by hiring the people in that targeted audience to produce content that they know would appeal to them. If it makes them laugh, then it's going to make the audience laugh. And I wanted to bring up that topic for discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Phil, what did you have to say?
So I first got introduced to Happy Wheels by way of Gray Still Plays, because in addition to we've reviewed some of his Sims stuff, and he does a lot of work in GTA, and at least for a while there was doing a lot of Happy Wheels stuff, and the situation he had set up over the years was when viewers saw that he was playing that game, they would create levels specifically hoping he would find them and put little messages in the screens for him. So it became this weird sort of interactive experience. But yeah, I mean, the game plays not too different from how this animated series plays out, minus the narrative part. You know, it's in the game, it's even more distilled. There's no narrative at all. There's not even an attempt at narrative. It's just scenarios where inevitably, you know, some kind of, you know, body mutilation is going to happen to these cartoons. They emulate the look of the game very precisely. So I find it hard to imagine. It wasn't made with the game. I can tell that because the game is actually fairly limited in terms of its mechanics, but the art is definitely Jim Bonacci's. It's an exact match, and they've added stuff like, you know, the lip sync and things like that afterwards. So I would guess this was made in something like Moho or Cartoon Animator, or one of those 2D animating softwares, and I would guess. I can't find anything online about what the arrangement was, and maybe that's not too unusual, but I would guess Bonacci was still developing this game for several years after this series came out. So he was actively developing and supporting the game when this was made. Hard to imagine that they would have just stole it from him or something. He was a developer. He was known. So I'm sure that they arranged something for the IP, because you're right, Tracy, if it was just about driving interest in the game, he doesn't make anything from that I can tell.
Yeah.
He doesn't make anything from it. It's free to play. It's free to make the levels. It's free to upload the levels. All of that's free. So yeah, if he had any sense at all, unless maybe he had a conscience about, I don't want to make money on this. But if you don't believe in it, then why are you doing it in the first place?
Right, exactly.
Anyway, so, I mean, it's, you know, divorce it from what the content is, which is disgusting. It's well made. Like, the series is actually well made from a craft point of view. It's well written. The joke style is very much in the vein of like Family Guy. This is what Seth MacFarlane's show would look like if there were no TV censors. I'm confident of that. Because if you look at the core humor of Family Guy, it is very much about this same thing you brought up, Ricky. It is about cruelty being funny. And they do as much graphic violence on Family Guy as they can get away with, and are constantly pushing the limit on it. Now, it's not this. It's not everybody is thrown in a wood chipper kind of thing. This is what he would do if there was no censors, though. He has that same, and he's my age, but he has that same adolescent humor, and always has. Every movie that he's made, he can't help but go that direction. There's some absurdly violent, comical scene in everything that he does. So he's one of those. He's one of those guys that just never grew up, or he is of the mindset of the machinima.com people, which is, I'm going to lean into this because I know this audience and I can make something off of them, you know? But what's a little frightening, because I think your analysis, Ricky, is spot on. Except that I think that it would be better if the interest in cruelty as humor were confined to the, what did you say, 16 to 25
16 to 25
males?
young male.
I sure wish that was the case. But I have a feeling, an unsettling feeling, that the appetite is a much broader demographic than that.
I see.
And that's a little frightening.
But primarily men.
Primarily men. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If I showed this to my wife and you know, in sincere, like, oh, I love this, you'll love it, I'd probably be divorced. Yeah. It's not something that appeals to women at all. But I think unfortunately, it appeals to an even broader age range of men. And if we're going to be honest here and not sound like some evangelical preacher, I think video games may have something to do with that. Yeah. Because if you look at what started happening in video games post Doom, where graphic body mutilation, I mean, Quake 2, one of the major plot points of Quake 2 is you come upon this factory where your fellow soldiers are being ground up into body parts that look just like this. They came up with a name for it, gibs or jibs, these body parts.
Giblets.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it wasn't done with comical intent back then. I don't think. It didn't come off that way. But it was, hey, we can get away with this. This is something that you would never see in a movie because it's too graphic. Well, fast forward now 30 years.
We're seeing the same thing.
Final Destination. It's in. There's a market for these movies too, for body, and frankly, there always were movies like this. It's just that they were really off the beaten path, and they probably didn't get theatrical runs. I'm trying to think of what some of the names of them were, but there's a series of movies that I want to say were done in the 80s that are about this group of people who this group of, let's say, Americans, Westerners, who end up lost in an Amazon jungle, and they get abducted by this tribe of very primitive, you know, headhunter types. You know, and it is insanely graphic. Like I think
it was called Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah, there's a series of them, and I read just I've never watched anything like that, but someone made a reference to it, and I went and looked it up, and just reading the Wikipedia plot summary, I got nauseous. It's really, really gruesome. And then there's even worse stuff, you know, Human Centipede and things like that. Which, please, if you don't know about that, don't do yourself a favor. Don't even Google that, like, to see what that's about. It's unbelievably hideous, and that's not made for 16 to 25s, or maybe it is, but a lot more than that. You know, you look for who the fans are of that kind of content, and it's way beyond that demographic. Yeah. So it's a little frightening there.
But I think we moved a little away from the focus, which was because in movies like Cannibal Holocaust and Centipede Man, the goal is to introduce fear into people, a sense of dread.
Right.
Whereas
Comedy's
the cartoons that we're talking about, the sole reason was to use cruelty to produce humor.
Right.
And like
that element of farce, like you mentioned.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And it was
good point.
It was a joke. So you have a joke, a death scene, and then another situation comes up and you tell the same joke again. And then another situation comes up and you tell the same joke again, which is why they're less than 3 minutes.
Right.
Because you can't tell the same joke 17 times without losing the audience. Sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to steer us back on the...
Yeah, and actually that maps precisely to the game. That's what the game is. You play the level, it's a few minutes long, there's something gruesome that either happens without question, or you try to avoid it, but the level is designed to make, like one of them is the irresponsible father. It's a man on a bicycle with his kid in the bike seat behind him and riding this crazy obstacle course with spikes and, things to smash and, Coyote and Roadrunner type stuff, but with all the blood and guts. And it's just gruesome. It's just horribly gruesome. And that's what the game is. So this show is faithful to that. Yeah, it's
So why does it appeal to such a large range of men and boys?
well, I don't know. And you're asking that of the guy who, when he was 28 years old, made Father Frag's Best, which was a family multiple homicide put up in a satire context for the purpose of humor. And it was bloody and gory, and the son murders like 6 people or something. And
But
it's just
but what you did is fundamentally different from what Happy Wheels does. Because
is it though?
yes, it is, because you told a story that was humorous. It wasn't just the fact that people got fragged, but it was the verbal humor as well. And it centered around a Homer Simpson or a Bart Simpson type character who would just rebel. There's none of that sense of identification in any of these. These characters are not characters. They're just figures that we identify as cartoons. Oh, that's a father because he looks like a father. In your scenario, those were real characters doing real things. Same type of humor, cruelty and violence to make it laughter, but with people who did verbal humor as well and visual humor as well. So it's much more sophisticated, I think.
Boy, I think you're being generous there, honestly. Like,
No, I'm not.
I think that I remember when you interviewed me years and years ago, and we sat down and did like an hour-long interview, and you talked to me about that film. And there were things that you were lifting out of it in terms of sophistication that I remember thinking, did I mean that? Like, was I intending that? I don't know. And maybe that doesn't even matter, but the fact that it's there is what matters. And if it came out of me subconsciously or whatever, I had a very interesting experience rewatching that film, my film, very recently. I did a director commentary on it and put it on my Patreon. And yeah, that ended up being the point of that watch was, who was this guy that made this? I don't even know him, And it's because I just couldn't imagine being entertained by, or even being able to stomach the idea of putting that out there as humor. And I talked some about what the proposed sequel was for Father Frag's Best, which was the next day, Joey goes to school and takes out everybody there.
Ooh.
Yeah, you know what happened right before that finished production? Columbine, which there's nothing funny about. Columbine.
No.
And that's what made me cancel that whole production and kind of wake up.
Of course.
But even so, even given that event, I still look back on it and first of all think, who was that guy? And secondly, I was 28.
Yeah.
If I'd made that when I was 16, it would be a different feeling, but I was a grown man. I should have known better. So I don't know. I'm going to reluctantly agree that yeah, maybe there's a little bit more of a narrative structure going on, but I still feel like that most people would see Father Frag's Best and think that that narrative is really just there in service of these graphically physical comedy jokes.
If Machinima.com was around and they approached you and said, hey, we want to buy Father Frag's Best and we want to do a series, would you do it?
Back then, I don't know. I was really thirsty back then. Is that the Gen Z term for it when you're trying too hard? I was really thirsty for some kind of commercial success back then. And now, absolutely not out of the question. I don't even want to re-release the film myself. I'm not putting it out on the free channel mainly for that reason. I'm doing the director's commentary, and the only reason I did the director's commentary was to open up about how it makes me feel now, and my conflicted feelings about it. Anyway, I don't want to spend the whole episode on that, but yeah, it's a really interesting topic. And what's funny too is that I can think of a time a year ago when I was watching Gray Still Plays play this game, and it made me laugh. But I think most of that is his performance, what he brings to it, the comments and he's basically, with his Let's Play style, he is ascribing narrative to it. He is, and so it gives it maybe a little bit, it lifts it just a little bit, but still it's using this same skin and bones. So it's really, yeah, it's making me think differently about that. So I want to say great pick. When I do, you'll know what I mean. Not one that I love, but I'm glad, really, really glad that you found this and picked it. I had no idea it even existed, and it is interesting to talk about.
Thanks. Damien, what's your thought about all this?
Well, I'm glad I got to listen to all of you first, because I watched this and I thought, I have no idea what I'm going to say about it.
I thought you were going to say, because I watched this and I laughed my ass off.
No, it's fine. Hey, if you loved it and you thought it was great, please tell us.
No, not really. Okay, there are a couple of things I did like. So I'll start with that. I liked that it was 2D. Rarely do we see 2D machinima, because most games are obviously 3D now. So that stood out to me as something that I quite liked. And I guess that's about it. It reminded me a lot of South Park, the animation style.
Right.
Though South Park does do the over-the-top violence and cruelty, usually just to tell a joke, but sometimes they do try and put some messages behind whatever the situation is, just to show just how ridiculous things can be.
The message here would be what? Don't stand in front of a giant wheel.
Yeah, don't do that.
Saw wheel.
Yeah, there's none of that kind of messaging in this film. It's just about, let's see how much violence we can cause. I didn't find it funny. I don't know, maybe when I was younger I might have done. There's another thing it reminded me of, which I did find funny at the time, but I probably wouldn't now. There's a cartoon series that was released online called, I think it was called Happy Tree Friends. And it's about these cute animals. And it'd be just as brutal and violent as this to each other and things like that. And I remember, I was listening to you, I was thinking about this, and I thought, I know why I found that funny. It's because it was so wrong. There's something about the humor, the situation is that it's just, you've got these cute little animals like bunnies and squirrels and things, and you don't expect this. And it's funny because it's wrong. And that's why I liked it. And I introduced my cousin, who's a few years younger than me, to it. And he loved it too. But again, I don't think he would now either. So I think we've matured a bit in our what we find entertaining. But as far as what's the appeal of something like this, it's probably the same thing or something similar. It's just wrong. That's it. Well, actually, just popped into my head. There's a show I do watch now called The Boys, which is like
Oh yeah, I know that one.
the parody of the superhero stuff. It's really over the top violence in a way that is wrong. That's just the way to describe it. I do enjoy that, but even then, there are times where it's not funny because they go too far with it. But when they get it right, it is funny. But this Happy Wheels doesn't appeal to me at all. I have to admit, despite the popularity of the game, I'd never heard of it until I'd seen this video, and I hadn't heard of those YouTubers that Tracy was talking about.
Me either.
Again, they had massive followings, but until Tracy, you mentioned them earlier, I had never heard of a single one of them.
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
But then you've got to remember there was a period of time when we were at the back end of the first wave of machinima, still enjoying the quality of the work, and recognizing the fact that the quality was, or the number of quality films was sort of dropping off. We weren't really picking up on the network channels and what Machinima was doing, because it was clearly going on a path that wasn't technically Machinima at all, just a sort of a money-making machine, really, which is what.
Well, and Minecraft wasn't and maybe
Yeah.
still wasn't ever on our Machinima radar because it wasn't
No.
being used for that, and it frankly isn't capable of being used for that in any
E-
compelling way. And that's
Exactly.
where all these creators come from. That's where Captain Sparkles comes from. And this was at a time
Yes.
when Minecraft was at its peak, and it
Exactly.
was breaking all kinds of records on YouTube for essentially what are just Let's Play videos in different styles. Log.zip is another one that's mentioned as a voice actor for this, and he's an interesting one. I was surprised to see him there because he has since grown up into quite a mature young man, and
Mm.
I would never in a million years associate himself with this content now.
Hmm.
But back then he was probably 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm guessing his age right, he's actually somebody that when back in 2021 we did an episode where my pick was a review of Minecraft Let's Play Machinima, and I covered like half a dozen creators, and he was one of them. Log.zip was really nice, seems to be a really nice guy, has worked his way up and kind of pretty regularly is part of the high level, like whatever that online trade show type thing that Minecraft does every year that they broadcast live. And he was for several years was on, he was flown in and did that show. So he's developed a nice reputation for himself, but yeah, his early content tilted more in this direction, not quite like this, but tilted more in the childish adolescent male humor
Mm.
direction, and he grew out of it, which is what people are supposed to do, right? So,
Yes.
yeah.
I was going to ask, do you think this would still be popular today?
Oh, I think so.
Do
Yeah,
you?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
definitely think
Yes.
so. I
Yes.
definitely think so. Let me, this is becoming an excessively long
Uh-huh.
episode, so I thought I would close with making a couple comments and then um, finish the episode. What I'm in this pick and in my comments, and I suspect in all of your comments, it's not so much making a judgment on this type of material because it's not wrong to laugh and enjoy this kind of material. What I was trying to do was to point out what it actually does so that you'll know that that's what that does. And you'll maybe think about that a bit more. In the same way that this great book, West of Everything by Jane Thompson, talks about, she eviscerates Westerns for all of their problems with death and males withholding their feelings and explosions of violence, but she's still addicted to them. So it's not an ethical judgment about this. It's just trying to point out what is the goal? What is the purpose of making these kinds of films? And the purpose is to find an audience that they know it would appeal to and to make the kind of stuff using cruelty and violence in cartoons to make as many possible views as they can. And as Tracy pointed out, the views are astronomical, which is why I suggest if you did the same kind of thing today, a la South Park, you'd get a huge mass of people watching it. So it's not wrong. There's a sense of fun in all of it. And there's not wrong to have fun and enjoy. But keep in mind what it actually does. That's all I'm trying to say. All right. Well, that's our episode. Would you like to close out for us, Phil?
Yeah, sure. Audience, I'm sure this is a provocative topic here and film. So we would love to receive your feedback and your thoughts on this. Feel free to drop us a comment down below the video, or drop us an email at talk@completelymachinima.com. My name's Phil. On behalf of my co-hosts Tracy, Ricky, and Damien, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for
Thank you.
sticking with us on this long episode, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.